My name is Molly. I'm 32 and married to Justin, who is 35 and works in an office. I'm a freelance fashion designer working from home. At first, my work was unstable with small projects, but then I got a big job with a nice paycheck. This gave Justin and me a chance to move into a fancy apartment. Since I wanted to live in a place like this, I agreed to pay the rent myself. Justin was happy, and I thought everything was going great, but things took an unexpected turn. One day, Justin brought his mom, Betty, over to our apartment. Betty is 65 and had been living alone since her husband passed away 3 years ago. "Hi, Melly," she said. "Hi, Betty, it's been a while, what's going on?" I asked. "Well, she wants to live with us," Justin said awkwardly. "Why?" I was surprised. He explained that Betty's house was old and falling apart, and she didn't have much money. She wanted to move in with us for a while. "Oh, I see," I said, though I wasn't thrilled about it. Our apartment felt like a private space just for the two of us. Betty was almost a stranger to me, so I didn't feel comfortable. "Please," Justin begged, "her house is falling apart. I'll make sure she finds a new place soon." "Okay," I agreed reluctantly, thinking it would only be temporary. A month later, Betty moved in. "Thank you for letting me stay here," she said. "No problem," I replied with a fake smile. "Make yourself at home." "Sorry to ask right away, but can I borrow some money?" she asked. I was surprised. She had just moved in and was already asking for money. "I've been seeing the doctor a lot, and it's expensive. Could you lend me $300? She said. I felt bad but understood that health issues could be costly at her age, so I gave her $650. Then, one day, Justin asked for my advice. "I think we should get a new car," he said. I was shocked. "We just bought a car 2 years ago. It's too small, we need a bigger one." I didn't see the point. We didn't need a bigger car. It was just for the two of us, well, 3 if you count Betty. "It's because my mom doesn't like it," he explained. "Why does she care about the car?" I was confused. "She wants a nicer car, like a Mercedes," he said. "What? We can't afford that. Does Betty even drive?" I couldn't understand why she was complaining. "I'm not buying an expensive car," I told him. "Tell her to." I didn't see why this was a big deal, but it didn't end there. Betty asked me for money again. "My medical bills are piling up. Could you help me again?" she said. "Should I be worried about your health?" I asked. She hesitated before saying, "Not really, I'm just feeling a little down and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is expensive. I'm really sorry." "How much do you need?" I asked. "About $1,000, she said. I was shocked. Therapy sounded so expensive. "My insurance only covers a few sessions. After that, I have to pay part of the cost," she explained. I was stunned but tried to understand that health treatments could be pricey. Even after that, Betty kept coming up with excuses like medical bills or transportation costs to visit sick friends, all to borrow more money from me. When I realized she had borrowed over $5,000, even though my job was going well, I was getting frustrated. Then, I noticed something strange. One day, I peeked into Betty's room. What? There were designer bags and wallets neatly arranged on the shelf. I couldn't believe my eyes. She said she didn't have money, but how could she afford all these expensive things? She borrowed so much from me, but had so many luxury items. I started to wonder if the medical bills were real. A month later, Betty came to ask for money again. "Can I borrow some money?" she asked, acting like it was no big deal. "Wait a second," I said. I had been planning to confront her, so I called Justin, who didn't seem to know what was going on. "I need to ask Betty what she's really spending the money on," I told him. "What's going on, Melly?" Justin asked, clearly confused. "Betty says she's paying for therapy, prescriptions, and..." She trailed off. "It's not just that, right? You've been buying designer bags and clothes, haven't you? Are you really seeing a therapist?" I asked bluntly. "Of course, I am," she replied quickly. "Well, show me the receipts, you must have them, right?" She didn't know how to answer, and I could tell she was caught in a lie. "What are you two talking about?" Justin asked, still confused. "Betty has borrowed over $5,000 from me, and it's all been for things that aren't even real," I said. "Well, even so, you don't need to be so harsh," Justin said. He was always protective of his mom, like a mama's boy. I don't have any receipts. I've been shopping and eating out with friends, Betty finally admitted. I thought to myself, it's crazy that she acts like she has no money, but is buying all this stuff. She wasn't depressed at all, it was all a lie. You need to pay me back right now. Betty looked at me with sad eyes. I can't pay that much back right away, she said. I've had enough, I replied, pointing to her room. You have all this designer stuff in your room. Sell it if you have to, but if not, you need to move out. Justin rushed to her defense. Hey, you're being unfair. She deserves a little luxury too. I wouldn't call borrowing money from me luxury. Over $5,000 is a scam, I snapped. You're being disrespectful, Justin said, upset. Don't act like you're in charge just because you're paying the rent. If you don't like it, you can leave too, I said, my anger boiling over. I glared at Justin, furious. Did I say anything wrong? He asked, confused. You're the one who brought Betty here in the first place. You don't do anything but stay home. Thanks to me, you get to live in this nice place, I snapped. You're so full of yourself. It's infuriating. Get out now. Justin was getting angry too. Fine, don't regret this, he said. He packed up only the essentials and left. I found a new place quickly. Since I worked remotely, I could live anywhere as long as it was comfortable. I didn't need to live in a high-rise. I had no intention of going back to that apartment. The rent was paid by me every month, and I figured Justin wouldn't be able to take over the lease. His paycheck was nowhere near enough to cover it, while my income was much higher. I met with a realtor I'd worked with before. I'm having trouble paying the rent for personal reasons, I told him. I could easily afford it, but I lied on purpose. I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do? He asked. I asked him for a favor. A few days later, I got a call from Justin while I was working. What? I answered. What have you done? He shouted. I had the lease cancelled, I said. You know I don't live there anymore. I shouldn't have to pay the rent, he argued. Well, my mom and I still live here, he said. I was shocked and sighed. I don't live there anymore, so why should I keep paying for the apartment? If you're struggling, talk to your mom. Maybe sell some of her stuff to get money, I said sarcastically. Shut up. It was you who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you don't want to move, take over the lease yourself, he yelled. I replied, well, with your salary, I'm sure you can afford it. He was silent for a moment, frustrated. You could probably find a cheap apartment, so why don't you just move in with your mom? I said coldly. Are you crazy? My mom already spent the money from selling her house, and I have no savings. How do you think I can find a new place? He asked, sounding desperate. Not my problem, I said coldly. He had been relying on my income all this time, and yet still had no savings? I realized just how irresponsible both he and his mother were. You deserve this for being so foolish. Figure it out on your own from now on, I said. Are you trying to make us homeless? You're still my wife, he shouted. I told you, deal with it. I'm done with you, goodbye. I hung up. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. Hello? I answered. Melly, I'm so sorry. I'll pay you back. Please don't kick us out, she said, sounding upset. I was shocked and disappointed. I don't want to teach you lessons, but you should live within your means. If you only have a small retirement, then live accordingly. If you want a better life, you have to work for it, I said. As a freelancer, I knew the reality. If I wanted a certain lifestyle, I had to earn it myself instead of depending on others. I'm sorry, Betty said. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, but that apartment has already been rented to someone else. You really need to move out. This is a legal matter, I told her coldly and ended the call. Later, I heard from the realtor that Justin and Betty had begged him, in tears, to keep the lease for them, but he told them a new tenant was moving in, and they had to leave. Even if they stayed, I knew Justin's salary wouldn't cover the rent, and they couldn't afford anything else. It was ridiculous for me to keep paying the rent while Justin was relying on me. He made everything worse by losing his temper, and there was no way back from that. What an idiot. I later learned from mutual acquaintances that they couldn't rent an apartment. They had to move from motel to motel because Justin didn't have enough money for the broker's fee and the deposit, and no one wanted to be his guarantor. Betty had only worked for a short time, so her social security didn't pay much, and they were struggling just to eat. They'd brought all this on themselves. Meanwhile, I managed to land another big project and became more financially comfortable. Looking back at our marriage, I realized that depending on each other too much is not sustainable, whether it's money or living situations. Relying on your partner too much only leads to pain when things go wrong. As for Justin and me, we stayed separated for a while before finally getting divorced. After everything, our feelings had cooled off, and there was no reason to stay together anymore. Now that we're strangers, I feel relieved. If I ever marry again, I'll be more careful. I'll take my time to find the right partner. The divorce taught me a lot about life from different perspectives.